What's happening in the heart of Los Angeles feels straight out of a movie. Crowds clashing with law enforcement, mass arrests, fireworks going off, looting, rocks flying through the air. This isn't fiction. It's real life. Things have escalated so much that President Trump himself has deployed National Guard units, while Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has authorized the deployment of hundreds of Marines. The result? Numerous arrests, injured people, overwhelmed police officers. In short, a high-voltage social and political crisis. But what's really behind these protests? What actually sparked them? What role is the government playing? And what could all this mean for the future of the United States? For decades, the southern U.S., especially California, has been a key destination for Latin American immigrants. Its geographic closeness to Mexico has fueled constant migration. In fact, it's important to remember that part of what's now the southern U.S., including California, used to belong to Mexico until the mid-19th century, when the war between the two countries broke out. Fast forward to the 20th and 21st centuries, and California has become home to one of the largest immigrant communities in the country, with Mexicans standing out in particular. U.S. policies haven't always been friendly to these communities. Still, despite the obstacles, migration continued. With its progressive outlook, California built a strong support network for immigrants. Los Angeles, in particular, has a long history of social movements, from civil rights protests to marches for immigrant dignity. The city has been the epicenter of many major causes, and Latino communities have always been on the front lines, often with backing from the state government. The real conflict exploded when former President Trump's federal policies came head-to-head with California's inclusive vision. As many of you know, his administration took a hardline stance on immigration, focusing on capturing and deporting undocumented immigrants and pushing the construction of the border wall. Among other things, surprise raids ramped up in homes and workplaces, feeding a climate of fear in many communities. But the tension wasn't just about actions, it was also about the rhetoric. Trump used a very aggressive narrative against immigrants, stirring up even more backlash.
They're very dangerous people. They're violent people. I used to say these are more violent than our criminals. In fact, the best part about them is they make our criminals look quite nice, actually, by comparison.
Years, if you call them people, I don't know if you call them people. In some cases, they're not people, in my opinion, but I'm not allowed to say that because the radical left says that's a terrible thing to say. These are animals, okay? And we have to stop it.
California, meanwhile, took a different path. Under Governor Gavin Newsom's leadership, the state refused to cooperate with federal orders and implemented its own protective measures for immigrants. In that spirit, California formally declared itself a safe state.
He's declared a war on culture, on history, on science, on knowledge itself. Databases, quite literally, are vanishing. He's delegitimizing news organizations, and he's assaulting the First Amendment.
Minimizing cooperation with federal immigration authorities. This move sparked a legal showdown with the Trump administration, exposing a deep clash in values. On one side, a conservative national government pushing for deportations. On the other, a state government standing up for its immigrant communities. So, what was the breaking point? The spark was the federal government's decision to send in armed forces and armored vehicles to carry out immigration raids without any coordination with California's authorities. For many, this was seen as a direct overreach, a violation of state sovereignty, and a provocative move. Gavin Newsom called the operation authoritarian and made it clear he wouldn't let the central government dictate how to run his state. The tension escalated so much that Trump hinted at the possibility of having the governor arrested for his resistance. At first, the protests were peaceful. Hundreds gathered in front of a federal immigration building in Los Angeles, demanding an end to the raids. Keep in mind, these raids aim to detain about 3,000 people per day nationwide. But soon the protests gained momentum, and thousands took to the streets. Things escalated, highways were blocked, rocks were thrown at police, and the situation spiraled out of control. LA law enforcement, overwhelmed by the scale of the events, resorted to tear gas, rubber bullets, and flashbang grenades to break up the crowds. The protests weren't limited to Los Angeles. Cities like San Francisco also joined the wave of mobilization. In response, Trump ordered the National Guard to be deployed, and Pete Hegseth brought the military into the operation, again, without any coordination with the state of California, which only made matters worse. Right now, the big question is, how far could this situation go? The Democratic opposition has accused the federal government of breaking the balance of powers, interfering with state responsibilities, and undermining local law enforcement. In fact, Gavin Newsom has already said he's considering suing the government for overstepping its bounds.
California will keep fighting. We'll keep fighting on behalf of our people, all of our people, including in the courts. Just yesterday, we filed a legal challenge to Donald Trump's reckless deployment of American troops to a major American city. Today, we sought an emergency court order to stop the use of the American military to engage in law enforcement activities across Los Angeles.
And if he gathers enough political support, formal investigations could begin into the political use of federal military forces. On top of that, such extreme measures could end up backfiring, sparking even more widespread citizen resistance across the country. And Trump? How does he get out of this mess? His options are pretty limited. One would be to reach a major national deal on immigration policy. But with how divided Congress is, that seems almost impossible right now. Another path would be to work with state and local authorities, invest in asylum infrastructure, distribute migrants more fairly among states, or provide financial support to the hardest-hit regions. But as we've said, the lack of dialogue makes that kind of cooperation very unlikely. The third option, and probably the one Trump is most likely to take, is to double down, increase the number of raids, tighten access to the country, and pressure other governments to align with his immigration stance. One thing's for sure, Los Angeles has become the symbol of a much bigger fight, a showdown between two opposing visions of the country, a fight that could spread to other states, especially Democrat-led ones, and trigger a massive political crisis. Now it's your turn. Do you think this wave of protests will go nationwide? Will Trump manage to get immigration under control without worsening the internal conflict? Drop your thoughts in the comments.